The desperate signal. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Beta 9 drifted silently through the void between star systems, its massive sensor arrays constantly scanning the darkness for any sign of intelligent life. Communication Officer Sarah Chen sat at her console during the quiet night shift, watching the endless stream of cosmic background radiation that filled her screens. She had been monitoring the deep space frequencies for 2 years, and most nights brought nothing but the usual stellar noise and occasional automated signals from human cargo vessels. Sarah sipped her coffee and checked the chronometer. 3 hours until shift change. The isolation of frontier duty could be overwhelming, but she found peace in the routine. Earth's colonies were expanding rapidly, and stations like Beta 9 served as early warning systems for any threats that might emerge from the unknown reaches of space. The first signal was so faint that Sarah almost missed it. A soft chirping sound emerged from the background static, unlike anything in her experience. She leaned forward and adjusted the gain controls, isolating the frequency. The pattern was clearly artificial, but it didn't match any human communication protocol in the database. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She activated the emergency beacon that would wake Commander Jackson Cross, then began recording everything. The signal grew stronger, more desperate. Even without understanding the language, Sarah could hear the fear in the alien voices. Commander Cross arrived within minutes, his uniform hastily thrown on over his sleeping clothes. Cross was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, a man who had seen enough action to recognize the sound of desperation when he heard it. He listened to the alien transmission with growing concern. "How long has this been coming in?" Cross asked, settling into the command chair. "About 15 minutes, sir. The computer can't identify the language, but the emotional content is clear. Someone out there is in serious trouble." Cross activated the station's primary AI system, ARIA, begin full analysis of this transmission. Priority Alpha protocols. The station's artificial intelligence was specifically designed for first contact scenarios. Banks of quantum processors hummed to life as ARIA began the complex task of translating an entirely unknown language. While they waited, Sarah continued monitoring the signal. The transmission was getting stronger, which meant whoever was sending it was putting more power into the broadcast. After 30 minutes of analysis, ARIA announced her findings. "Commander, I have achieved partial translation of the incoming signal. The transmission originates from a species calling themselves the Keth Ani Collective. They are broadcasting a general distress call to any civilization capable of military intervention." Cross felt his blood run cold. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and it was a cry for help. What kind of intervention are they requesting? They describe an invasion by entities they call the Void Swarm. According to the transmission, the Keth Ani have already lost 4 of their 7 worlds. Their defensive capabilities have been overwhelmed, and they estimate complete extinction within 72 standard hours. Sarah watched the data streaming across her console. The mathematical precision of the Keth Ani technology was remarkable, far beyond anything humanity had achieved. These were clearly an advanced civilization, yet they were being destroyed by something even more powerful. RRA, are the Keth Ani asking for help from other alien species as well? Affirmative, Commander. However, the transmission indicates that other galactic civilizations have declined to provide assistance. The Keth Ani refer to their neighbors as the peaceful ones who avoid military conflict at all costs. Cross was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't, and apparently they were the only species willing to fight. "Sarah, compile everything we've recorded and transmit it directly to Earth Command. Mark it as Priority Alpha, First Contact Protocol. Then get me Admiral Stone's personal frequency." Sarah's fingers flew across her controls. Admiral Rebecca Stone was the commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, a woman whose reputation for quick decision-making was legendary throughout human space. If anyone could organize a response to this crisis, it would be her. Within an hour, Sarah had established a secure channel to Earth. Admiral Stone's image appeared on the main screen, her steel-gray eyes taking in the situation with characteristic intensity. She had been awakened from sleep, but her mind was already working through the tactical implications. Commander Cross, I've reviewed your preliminary report. How reliable is this translation? ARIA has achieved 78% accuracy, Admiral. The Kethani are definitely under attack by something they call the Void Swarm. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours, but they're still losing. Stone nodded grimly. The President has been briefed. We're mobilizing the fleet immediately. How much time do we have? The Kethani estimate 68 hours until complete extinction, but that was based on their transmission timestamp. We might have less time than that. Understood. Cross, I want continuous monitoring of that signal. If the Kethani fall silent, we need to know immediately. Stone out. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Emergency broadcasts went out to every human military installation in the galaxy. Ships that had been scheduled for routine maintenance were pressed into service. Civilian vessels were requisitioned as troop transports. The scale of the mobilization was unprecedented in human history. Sarah continued monitoring the Kethani signal, which had become increasingly frantic. Through Aria's translation, she learned more about the species humanity was trying to save. The Kethani were a peaceful collective of scientists and philosophers who had never developed weapons of war. They had relied on their advanced technology and diplomatic relations with other species to maintain their security. The Void Swarm was different from anything they had encountered. The creatures appeared to be a hive-minded species that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind. They had emerged from the galactic core and were spreading outward, destroying everything in their path. Commander, Aria announced, I'm receiving new data from the Kethani transmission. They are offering their complete technological database to any species willing to provide military assistance. Cross whistled softly. The Kethani technology could advance human civilization by centuries. Their medical knowledge alone could save millions of lives. But more importantly, these were sentient beings facing extinction, and they were calling for help. The first ships of the Earth Defense Fleet began arriving at the staging area within 18 hours. Sarah watched on her long-range sensors as destroyers, cruisers, and battleships took position around the massive command carrier UES Defiance. The ship was Admiral Stone's flagship, a mobile fortress capable of projecting power across vast distances. Captain Miguel Santos was loading his Marine battalions onto assault carriers when he received the final briefing about their mission. His soldiers were the elite of humanity's military, trained in the brutal combat schools of Earth's various conflict zones. They had grown up hearing stories of their ancestors who had fought impossible battles and won through sheer determination. Listen up, Marines, Santos announced to his assembled troops. We're about to make history. This is humanity's first contact with alien life, and we're going in as protectors. The enemy thinks they can terrorize peaceful species because nobody has ever stood up to them. They've never faced humans in battle. The loading process took 24 hours. Santos Marines filled transport after transport, bringing enough firepower to level a small moon. Their equipment was designed for the kind of close-quarters combat that humans had perfected through centuries of warfare on Earth's dangerous surface. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, spent her time analyzing every piece of data about the Kethani. She had dreamed of first contact her entire career, but she had never imagined it would happen under such circumstances. The Kethani appeared to be a silicon-based life form, crystalline beings who communicated through harmonic resonance, as well as traditional language. They're beautiful, she told Admiral Stone during the final briefing. Their entire civilization is based on harmony and cooperative growth. They've never experienced war because they've never needed to fight. That's why they're so vulnerable to the Void Swarm. Stone studied the tactical displays showing the Kethani star system. 3 worlds were already dark, their surfaces scored clean by the swarm. The remaining planets were under constant attack by bioships that defied human understanding of physics. What do we know about these void swarm creatures? They appear to be a composite organism, Dr. Vasquez explained. Individual units that function as part of a larger collective intelligence. They reproduce by consuming organic matter and converting it into more of themselves. It's like a biological factory that spreads across entire worlds. The final ship arrived at the staging area 36 hours after the initial alert. The human fleet was the largest military force ever assembled, over 300 vessels of various classes. But as Admiral Stone looked at the tactical projections, she wondered if it would be enough. The Keth Annie signal was growing weaker. Araya reported that the aliens' communication arrays were taking damage as the Void Swarm closed in on their final strongholds. Time was running out. All ships, this is Admiral Stone, she announced over the fleet-wide communication system. We're about to jump into the unknown to save a species we've never met from an enemy we don't understand. But that's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves, and we never give up when the odds are against us. Fleet, prepare for jump to hyperspace. The massive fleet disappeared into the void, racing toward a distant star system, where the fate of an entire civilization hung in the balance. Sarah Chen watched them go from her monitoring station, then turned back to her console to maintain contact with the desperate voices calling out from across the galaxy. The Deathworld response. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Keth Annie system, and immediately the magnitude of the crisis became clear. 3 of the 7 worlds were nothing but lifeless rocks, their surfaces stripped bare by the Void Swarm. The remaining planets were under constant attack by creatures that defied human understanding of biology. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical displays with growing concern. The Void Swarm bioships were unlike anything in human military doctrine. They moved with organic fluidity, pulsing and writhing through space like living tissue. Some were as large as human battleships, while others moved in coordinated swarms of thousands. "Admiral," reported the sensor officer, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the 4th planet. It appears to be the Keth Annie homeworld, and it's under heavy attack." Stone activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, battle stations, we're going in hot. Captain Santos, prepare your Marines for immediate deployment." The first engagement began as soon as the human fleet moved into the inner system. A cluster of Void Swarm bioships detected the newcomers and immediately changed course to intercept. The creatures moved with disturbing speed, their forms shifting and adapting as they approached. Captain Rebecca Torres commanded the destroyer UES Hammer, one of the fastest ships in the fleet. Her crew had trained for years in the brutal combat simulations that prepared human warriors for battle. As the Void Swarm creatures closed in, she gave the order to open fire. The human weapons were designed for maximum destruction. Kinetic penetrators tore through the bioship's organic armor, while plasma charges burned through their living tissue. But the creatures adapted quickly, their forms shifting to absorb and redirect the incoming fire. "These things are learning our attack patterns," Torres reported to the fleet. "They're adapting to our weapons in real time." Admiral Stone watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. The Void Swarm creatures were formidable opponents, but they had never faced human military doctrine before. Humans had learned to fight on a world where everything was trying to kill them. They had developed tactics based on aggression, adaptability, and an absolute refusal to give up. All ships switched to pattern Delta 7. Random fire sequences, maximum aggression. Don't let them predict our movements. The human fleet changed tactics instantly. Instead of coordinated volleys, each ship began firing independently, using random targeting patterns and unpredictable maneuvers. The Void Swarm creatures, which had been adapting to human weapons, suddenly found themselves unable to keep up with the chaotic assault. Dr. Vasquez monitored the battle from the medical bay while preparing for first contact with the Keth Annie. She had established communication with the aliens using the translation protocols developed by Araya. The Keth Annie were amazed that anyone had responded to their distress call, and they were even more surprised by the humans' aggressive tactics. The peaceful ones told us that warfare was obsolete. The Kethani leader transmitted. They said that advanced civilizations resolve conflicts through negotiation and compromise. How do your people fight with such intensity? Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. We come from what you might call a death world. Earth is a planet where survival requires constant vigilance and the ability to fight for every advantage. We've been shaped by millions of years of conflict, and we've learned that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is through force. The space battle raged for hours as the human fleet fought its way toward the Kethani homeworld. The Void Swarm threw everything they had at the newcomers, but human tactics proved superior. The creatures had never encountered a species that fought with such calculated violence and strategic brilliance. Captain Santos finally got his chance when Admiral Stone ordered ground forces to deploy on Kethani Prime. The planet's surface was a crystal garden of incredible beauty, but it was being consumed by Void Swarm creatures that burrowed through the living rock like parasites. Santos's Marines hit the ground running, their power armor gleaming in the alien sun. They had trained for combat in every possible environment, from the frozen wastes of Europa to the burning deserts of Mars. The Kethani world presented new challenges, but human adaptability was legendary. Marines, remember your training, Santos commanded, as his troops spread out across the crystalline landscape. These creatures are tough, but they've never faced humans before. Show them what Deathworlders can do. The first ground engagement was brutal. Void Swarm creatures erupted from the crystal formations, their forms shifting between liquid and solid states. They moved with alien intelligence, but they had never encountered enemies who fought with such ferocity and tactical sophistication. Human Marines used every weapon in their arsenal. Plasma rifles carved through the creatures' adaptive armor, while explosive charges shattered their crystalline hiding places. But the real advantage was human psychology. Marines who had grown up on Earth knew how to fight enemies that were bigger, stronger, and more numerous than themselves. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez led her squad through a crystal forest that was being consumed by Void Swarm organisms. The creatures had formed a living wall around the Kethani civilian shelters, and conventional weapons weren't breaking through their defenses. Sergeant, her demolitions expert, reported, "These things are too adaptive. They're absorbing our explosive force and redirecting it." Rodriguez studied the tactical situation, then smiled with the kind of expression that had made human Marines feared throughout their own solar system. "Then we don't give them time to adapt." Johnson, Wallace, set up a crossfire pattern. "Martinez, you're with me. We're going straight through the middle." The assault was pure human aggression. Instead of trying to outthink the adaptive creatures, Rodriguez's squad simply overwhelmed them with speed and violence. They moved too fast for the Void Swarm to adapt, hitting them from multiple angles simultaneously while advancing toward the civilian shelters. The Kethani civilians were unlike anything the Marines had ever seen. They were beautiful crystalline beings that communicated through musical tones, their forms shifting between different harmonic frequencies. They had never seen warfare before, and they were terrified by the violence around them. "It's okay," Rodriguez told them through her translator. "We're here to help. My name is Maria, and I'm a human Marine. We came because we heard your call for help." The Kethani leader, a being that called itself Harmony of Seven Crystals, resonated with wonder. "Your species fights with such passion. The peaceful ones told us that advanced civilizations had evolved beyond violence. How do you maintain such intensity in battle?" Rodriguez checked her weapon charge while scanning for more Void Swarm creatures. "We fight because we have to. Where we come from, everything is trying to kill you. The weather, the animals, even the plants. We learned that the only way to survive is to be tougher than whatever's trying to hurt you." The battle for Kethani Prime lasted 18 hours. Human forces fought their way through every crystal city, every underground shelter, every floating spire where civilians had taken refuge. The Void Swarm creatures adapted to their tactics repeatedly, but humans adapted faster. Admiral Stone coordinated the final assault from her flagship. The Void Swarm had a central control organism buried deep in the planet's core, something they called the Queen Mind. If they could destroy it, the entire invasion force would collapse. Captain Santos, we need a volunteer team to go deep underground. This is a one-way mission. The tunnel system will collapse after the detonation. Santos looked at his assembled Marines, all of whom had stepped forward without hesitation. He chose a squad of his best soldiers, including Sergeant Rodriguez, and led them personally into the crystal caverns beneath the planet's surface. The journey to the Queen Mind was a nightmare of adaptive horrors. The Void Swarm threw everything they had at the human squad, but the Marines fought with the kind of determination that had made their species legendary. They had grown up on stories of ancestors who had held impossible positions against overwhelming odds, and they carried that legacy with them into the alien depths. The Queen Mind was a massive organism that filled an entire cavern, its form constantly shifting between different states of matter. It communicated through bioelectric pulses that hurt to look at, and its presence filled the Marines with instinctive dread. "Ugly son of a bitch," Rodriguez commented, arming her demolition charges. "Captain, we're ready to blow this thing to hell." Santos looked at his squad, all of whom were prepared to die to protect a species they had never met before today. It was the kind of sacrifice that defined humanity's relationship with the universe. They protected those who couldn't protect themselves, regardless of the cost. "For the Kethini," Santos said, triggering the detonation sequence. The explosion that destroyed the Queen Mind was visible from orbit. The Void Swarm creatures across the entire system suddenly stopped moving, their collective intelligence severed. The invasion was over. Admiral Stone watched the tactical display as the remaining bioships drifted lifeless through space. The human fleet had saved an entire civilization, but more importantly, they had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in a way that no one would forget. Dr. Vasquez worked with the Kethani survivors to establish formal diplomatic relations. The crystalline beings were amazed by human courage and tactical brilliance. They had never imagined that a species could fight with such intensity while still maintaining their compassion for others. "Your people are unlike anything in the galactic community," Harmony of 7 crystals transmitted. "The peaceful ones avoid conflict at all costs, but you embrace it when necessary. You call yourselves Deathworlders, but you fight to preserve life." Admiral Stone smiled as she prepared the fleet for departure. The Kethani had offered their complete technological database as payment, but they had also offered something more valuable: friendship with a species that understood the value of sacrifice. "That's what humans do," she replied. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, so we learn to be stronger than death itself. When someone calls for help, we answer. When someone threatens the innocent, we fight. And when the odds are against us, we get stubborn." The human fleet began its journey home, but they left behind a galaxy that had been changed forever. Word of the Deathworlders who had saved the Kethani spread throughout the Peaceful One's civilizations. For the first time in galactic history, there was a species willing to fight for others, and in the depths of space, other threatened civilizations began to hope that if the darkness came for them, the humans might answer their call as well.